As I said last week, we will try to start right about 6:04, 6:05, so get her in time to get your stuff and get to your tables, and it's always all right to filter in a little bit as we get going. Always start with a couple of announcements. Today, let me remind you, because we probably have a few guys who weren't able to be here last week, registration and donuts and everything are out in the lobby this year because of the renovation and different shape of the room. But you can register out there at the table. Anytime, you can pay anytime. You're on the honor system. Do that. It's $50 for the whole season. That's how we provide you with this wonderful gourmet breakfast. But check in out there, and if you have not registered, you can do it right out there at the table, or you can do it online as well. Always sign in the table sheet on your table every week. You can just check the box next to your name. Double check your emails. If your name is not on the table, or you've moved tables, just write your name in, and then we'll get you into that table. We allow tables to shape up and change a little bit over the first month, 4 or 5 weeks or so, as you find your right place at your table group. So appreciate that. 2 things today. We're doing prayer a little bit differently this year, and I'll explain that again at the end of the session, but we are going to do the prayer note again that we make available if you want to send it to someone we've prayed for. It's starting at table 1, and all you do is when it comes to your table, you just sign your name next on the list. It looks like the Declaration of Independence, all these signatures in like 3 or 4 columns, front, back, whatever. Just sign your name the size everybody else has it in a row, and we'll see how far we get around today. If we don't finish it today, we'll finish it next week. So that's starting at table 1, going right around the room. You may get it halfway through today's session, but we'll sign the prayer note and we'll have that all ready. On your table, you'll see a flyer. We don't put a lot of flyers on tables at Team, but this one's a pretty cool one. Doug Walton, one of our team guys, has been a long time, has worked for a long time as an executive at Tyndale House Publishers, and they're having a warehouse sale. And the reason is, I put this on the table is, or let him, because if you're looking for a good study Bible, you don't have a good study Bible. I mean, not just the Bible with the text, that's good, but a good study Bible has notes that help you understand more what you're reading. They have some really, really good Bibles. I think he said you can find a $70 Bible for like $20 or $30. So if you're looking for your personal Bible, pick up this, and you can get one at a really good price. All right, here's our story for today. One beautiful fall Saturday morning, 2 men are walking their dogs along the Fox River, just enjoying the beautiful day. The first guy's walking his beautiful chocolate lab Rhodesian Ridgeback mix, and the second guy's walking his Chihuahua. It's getting close to lunchtime, so the first guy says, "Hey, you want to head into town to get something to eat?" His friend says, "Sure, but I don't think any of the restaurants in town allow dogs." The guy with the lab Rhodesian Ridgeback mix says, "No problem." He takes out 2 pairs of dark sunglasses, puts one on, and gives the other to his friend and says, "Just follow my lead." They walk into the local sports bar and grill, and the waiter stops them right at the door and says, "Sorry, sir, no dogs allowed in this establishment." The guy says, "Well, this is my seeing eye dog. You're legally required to allow me to eat here." The waiter apologizes profusely and lets him in. So the guy with the Chihuahua walks in too, but the waiter stops him and says, "Sorry, sir, no dogs allowed." The guy goes, "But this is my seeing eye dog. I'm with the other guy." The waiter says, "You can't fool me, sir. You have a Chihuahua." The man reacts and says, "What? They gave me a Chihuahua?" That's one of my favorites. There's plenty more like that coming, by the way. This is week 2 of our team season. It'll be 25 weeks. Today we're dealing with the question, where did I come from? It's the question of origins. And the clip I'm going to show you comes from the movie that came out a couple of years ago called Noah. I'm always intrigued when Hollywood produces a movie that comes right out of the Bible. This is one that was interesting. I did go see it. They get a lot of things wrong, but they get a few things right. In this scene, Noah is telling his children the story of creation. I think it's interesting, so take a look at the clip.
Let me tell you a story. The first story my father told me, and the first story that I told each of you. In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing but the silence of an infinite darkness. But the breath of the Creator fluttered against the face of the void, whispering, "Let there be light." And light was. And it was good. The first day. And then the formless light began to take on substance and shape. The second day. And our world was born. Our beautiful, fragile home. and a great warming light nurtured its days. And a lesser light ruled the nights. And there was evening and morning, another day. And the waters of the world gathered together, and in their midst emerged dry land. Another day passed, and the ground put forth the growing things, a thick blanket of green stretching across all creation. And the waters, too, teemed with life. Great creatures of the deep that are no more. Vast multitudes of fish, some of which may still swim beneath these seas. And soon, the sky was streaming with birds. And there was evening, and there was morning, a fifth day. Now the whole world was full of living beings. Everything that creeps, everything that crawls, and every beast that walks upon the ground. And it was good. It was all good. There was light and air and water and soil, all clean and unspoiled. Your plants and fish and fowl and beast, each after their own kind, all part of the greater whole, all in their place, and all was in balance. It was paradise, the jewel in the Creator's palm. And the Creator made man, and by his side woman, father and mother of us all. He gave them a choice. Follow the temptation of darkness, or hold on to the blessing of light. But they ate from the forbidden fruit. Their innocence was extinguished. And so for the 10 generations since Adam, sin has walked within us. Brother against brother. Nation against nation. Man against creation. We murdered each other. We broke the world. We did this. Man did this. Everything that was beautiful, everything that was good, we shattered. Now, it begins again.
Okay, there's a lot in that clip, as you could tell, a lot of assumptions in there, but what I want you to reflect back on is the way it began. He said, I'm going to tell you the first story. And he began with, in the beginning, there was nothing. And the Creator breathed, and it started all of creation. That's where we begin. We're dealing with the question of origins today. Picture a conversation between two men, meet at a business convention, maybe at a Cubs game, and very early in that conversation, you would hear two questions. You would hear the question, so what do you do? We're actually going to talk about that next week. And then you'd hear, where are you from? Where'd you come from? Where are we from? Genesis chapter 1, you look in your booklets. I'm going to read the first verse and then verses 26 to 27. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Verse 26, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over everything, every living creature that moves on the ground. Point one today is everything comes from God. Now, what I covered today is going to be review for a lot of you, but for some of you, I just want to give you a way to think more clearly about the questions of origin. Everything comes from God. When my boys were young, they liked to build Lego toys. Anybody still have Legos laying around their house from when your kids were young? Anybody? We probably still have a box of them somewhere. But first what they would do is they'd build the Lego toy according to the instructions for that particular Lego toy, like a tank or a spaceship or something. And then they'd get kind of bored and they'd start combining all the Lego kits to make their own crazy creations. I don't know if your kids do the same thing, but they'd make these wild things with all the different parts that never fit together. But I remember one Christmas I gave each of the older boys, they were like 10 and 8 years old, a 350-piece Lego set. Let's say I walked into their bedroom the next day, the day after Christmas, and I found a perfectly assembled attack helicopter, like that, sitting right in the middle of their floor. If I saw that, I could make one of three possible conclusions. First, I could conclude that the attack helicopter was eternal, that it had always been there since the beginning of time itself. But that'd be dumb because I know I gave them the attack helicopters just the day before. Secondly, I could assume the attack helicopter had been assembled by accident, that maybe a window had been left open at night and a strong wind blew in and assembled all 350 pieces exactly into the shape of an attack helicopter. Or thirdly, I could assume that someone, some intelligent being, had put them together intentionally and assembled the attack helicopter. Now, in the same way, when we deal with the question, where did everything come from, there are really only three options we can consider. First is that the universe is eternal, that it's always been here. And by the way, that was the prevailing scientific theory for centuries until the early part of the 20th century. The idea that the universe had a beginning dates back to about 1916 when an unknown scientist named Albert Einstein was developing his theory of general relativity. And he realized that his own theory predicted an expanding universe. Now, I can't possibly explain to you how he did that, but he realized he was predicting an expanding universe, but he was unwilling to accept the implications of his own theory, which meant that the universe had a beginning and therefore a beginner. So he altered his theory to conform with the prevailing thought of the day that the universe was static and had always been in existence. Then, in 1929, Edwin Hubble announced his discovery that the universe was indeed expanding, and he could prove it through telescopes. Eventually, that convinced Albert Einstein that his model of a static universe was wrong. Now, the implications were enormous. For the universe is still expanding, it had a finite beginning, and therefore a beginner. Secondly, we could assume that the universe happened by accident, that something came from nothing, and that nothing then organized itself into galaxies, solar systems, and ultimately one planet that we know of that has exactly the right properties to incubate life as we know it, that all that happened by the random forces of the universe. In other words, like the attack helicopter being formed by wind that blew into the window and randomly assembled them to look exactly like that. But this would be a violation of one of the fundamental laws of physics, often called the law of conservation of mass and energy. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. It can simply change from one state to another. So if matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed, where did all the matter and energy in the universe come from? Thirdly, we could assume that the universe was created and organized by an outside force, intelligence, or power. The question is, what outside force, intelligence, or power? Francis Crick was a British Nobel Prize-winning scientist and an outspoken atheist. He's credited with discovering the double helix model of the DNA strand, and he wrote a book entitled Life Itself. Now, he wrote that there's no possible way that the complexity of DNA developed spontaneously by random on Earth. He thought it had to have come here from somewhere else. That, in other words, there had to be some external force that put DNA here because it's too complex to have happened by chance. But since he was an atheist, he couldn't say that external force was God. So his theory, this is a Nobel Prize-winning astrophysicist, his theory was that Earth was seeded deliberately by an alien civilization. He called this directed panspermia. In other words, we came from aliens. Now, even a third grader knows how to ask the next question, right? Where did the aliens come from? Now, the late Carl Sagan, who was a leading voice in the SETI project, S-E-T-I, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, which is a bunch of high-powered radio telescopes aimed at the universe, right? You know what that looks like? All these this massive array of high-powered telescopes trying to detect some sort of intelligent communication from outer space. Because they believe that if we can detect some highly specified complex messaging, even if we can't translate it, it'll tell us there's intelligent life out there. Carl Sagan said such a discovery of intelligence would be the most important discovery in the history of the world. Now, SETI has been listening to the universe for over 55 years now. Spent several $billion. They've searched over 100,000 galaxies. Nothing. Not a single peep from the universe. The Bible begins with these words, "In the beginning, God created." 5 words, but notice 3 things in the 5 words. First, in the beginning. The Bible assumes that God exists eternally outside of space and time. In Psalm 90 and many other places in the Bible, we read things like this: "Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God." Now, for many of us, we just assume that. Of course, God's eternal. But you know, the Bible is the only holy book in the world that unambiguously states that God exists independently of space and time. It's significant. Secondly, we see the cosmos, according to the Bible, had a finite beginning. Everything that is, all matter and all energy, all stars, our galaxies, planets, black holes, fundamental particles, dark matter, even your aunt's fruitcake, had a singular beginning. It's not eternal. It hasn't been here forever. And that's exactly what most scientists believe today. They just call it the Big Bang. Thirdly, it says God created. Now, we don't see it in English, but that word created is a unique Hebrew word, bara. It means creating something from nothing. It's different than the word making something. When human beings make something, when we make a wheel or a telescope or a cell phone, we make that thing out of other stuff that already exists. The Bible says only God, and this word is only used for God, this verb, bara, is only used of God. Only God creates stuff that doesn't yet exist. An astrophysicist named Hugh Ross writes this: the Bible states explicitly and repeatedly the two most fundamental properties of the Big Bang: a transcendent cosmic beginning and a universe that is continually expanding. Listen to Isaiah 42:5, written 3,000 years ago. This is what the Lord says, He who created the heavens and stretched them out. Now, the point of all this, and you guys know I'm not a scientist, but the point of all this is to say that the Bible is not a fairy tale. The Bible is not a science book, it's the story of God. But there is science in the Bible. Faith and science are not enemies. Faith and science are companions. You can think and believe the Bible at the very same time. It's important. Everything came from somewhere. The Bible says everything came from God, therefore you and I came from God. Secondly, you were created in the image of God. In the image of God. How many of you took time on August 21st to watch the eclipse, total eclipse of the sun? All right? How many of you drove somewhere to get a better view when you went south? Right? I watched from the rooftop of my house. That's what I look like. I have no idea why I'm making that face. One of my boys asked the question when we were watching. You can actually, well, you can leave it up there. It's fine. One of my boys asked a funny question. We're sitting on the roof, and I'm doing that, he's doing that, and he goes, Dad, why do we care? What's the big deal about the eclipse? First of all, here it didn't look that awesome, but he said, what's the big deal? Why do we care? 2 minutes from now, it's going to go away. It won't make any difference in our lives whatsoever. Why do we care? It's a good question. Why did it matter? Why the sense of excitement, joy, awe, almost religious fervor about the eclipse? Did you see Tom Skilling, the weatherman? He was just weeping with joy, like ecstasy over this. It was really fun to watch. Other questions, like why do human beings bury their dead with ceremony? As a pastor, I do lots of grade-size ceremonies. They're always moving. Why do we do that? Why do human beings feel outrage? For example, when a child is murdered or abused by people that child should be able to trust. Why do we feel outraged when an NFL player kneels during the national anthem? Why do some people feel outraged when the president tweets another tweet? The Bible explains all of this when it says you are created in the image of God. This is only said of human beings in the book of Genesis. Only human beings are made in the image of God. What does it mean? Now, it's not physical, obviously. God doesn't have a body. God is a spirit. He doesn't dwell in time and space the way human beings do. So what does it mean? It means at least 6 capacities that are unique to human beings. First, the capacity for intelligence. The capacity for intelligence. Lots of animals are surprisingly intelligent, right? You watch Animal Planet. I mean, chimpanzees can learn to use sign language. It's amazing. I've been told that dolphins can recognize themselves in a mirror. Amazing. But human beings invent sign language and teach it to the chimpanzees. Human beings invent mirrors so the dolphins can find their face in it. Human beings ponder the meaning of our existence. We think about and plan for the future. We wonder about death. We wonder where we came from. We wonder where we're going. Therefore, our very interest in origins, science itself, is a testament to the image of God stamped on us. C.S. Lewis said this: atheism turns out to be too simple, for if the whole universe has no meaning, we should have never discovered it has no meaning. You have to think about that for a while. The capacity for intelligence. Secondly, the capacity for creativity. Among all the created order, only human beings display creativity. Human beings invent things. Now, birds build nests. I have birds that build nests at my house every spring. They build nests, but they always build the exact same nest, right? They do it out of instinct. They don't like build a second level or put in a jacuzzi the next year. Human beings invent. Human beings create. A couple of years ago, I went to Dubai in the Middle East. Went to the very top of the building called the Burj Khalifa. It's 140 stories tall. It's unbelievable. Amazing feat of human engineering and creativity. Third, the capacity to appreciate beauty. Human beings create art. Art. A year ago, my wife and I were traveling in Europe, had a chance to go to Paris and visit the Louvre Museum. Saw the Mona Lisa in person. I wasn't that impressed, but it was kind of cool. Saw statues. It took years to carve, like the one on like the Thinker by Rodin. You drive down to Chicago, you see graffiti on the sides of railway cars. Human beings stop and stare at sunsets. We take pictures of sunsets. We take selfies with sunsets. Why do we do that? Because we are in the image of a God who created beauty. Fourth, the capacity for moral choice. The capacity for moral choice. This is why people are outraged on both sides of the NFL anthem issue. Because we're created in the image of God. Certain things seem wrong to us. Certain things seem right to us. Animals aren't upset about the national anthem. They aren't. But we are. Only human beings create moral codes of conduct. Only human beings have what is called moral choice or free will. That is, we can choose to act over against our biological instincts. We can choose to restrain or change our own behavior. Animals don't do that. Fifth, the capacity for love. The capacity for love. A couple of weeks ago, I came over here to visit on a Saturday morning, a ministry that our church does called Buddy Break. It's a ministry to families with children of special needs. And 100 people come and give 3 hours of their time just to love these children who are in wheelchairs or blind or struggling some way. There's no family relation. There's no reason at all to give that time and love to these children other than it's good to do. Only human beings do that. Now, why is it so important to understand the biblical teaching about image of God? Because if we look out at the world today, it doesn't take long to see something's wrong with the world. We see racism and sex trafficking and religious genocide. And the Bible, in the first chapter of the first book, provides a profound solution to all the rage and violence we see in the world today. And that's this: human beings, every single one of us, male, female, white, black, brown, whatever ethnicity, is created in the image of God. And that teaching has been around for over 3,000 years, and we still don't get it. Finally, sixth, we were created with the capacity for worship. And that leads us to the third point today. You were created for God. Created for God. The overwhelming majority of human civilizations have worshiped something. Overwhelming majority. The ancient Egyptians worshipped Ra, the sun god. The Romans and Greeks worshipped the whole pantheon of gods, like 12 gods and goddesses, Zeus, Poseidon, Aphrodite, and so forth. The Mayans worshipped gods and goddesses that demanded human sacrifice. Why do human beings worship? Only human beings worship, and all human beings worship, but why? I went to Barcelona in that trip to Europe a year ago. We finished in Barcelona, and there's a cathedral. If you've been to Barcelona, there's a cathedral there called La Sagrada Familia, the Sacred Family. And that cathedral was dreamed up by a famous architect, I forget his name, Gaudin or something like that. And he started building that 120 years ago. He's been dead for decades, and they're still building it. It's not finished yet. It's been in process for over 120 years. They're still building the towers on it. Why? What are we doing? Well, because we're made in the image of God. And part of the image is an inherent need to worship. Here's the definition of worship that I like. To worship means to offer extravagant devotion to someone or something. To offer extravagant devotion to something. All human beings do this. In fact, human beings can't keep from doing this any more than we can keep from breathing air. Every human being worships something. Now, it might be the God of the Bible who revealed himself in Jesus Christ. That's what we believe here. But it might be work. It might be career. It might be money. You might offer your extravagant devotion to a 1965 Mustang that you love more than life itself. You might be a sports team. Even an atheist who tries hard not to believe in a transcendent God will put that devotion somewhere because we can't help it. Why? In Ecclesiastes, an ancient part of the Bible, we read this: He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. He set eternity in the human heart. We're created in His image, and we constantly long for and look for the God who made us, even if we don't know we're doing it. Back in 2002, a pastor named Rick Warren out in California published a book entitled The Purpose-Driven Life. That book sold 30 million copies by 2007, one of the leading Christian booksellers really of all time. And that book begins with this simple sentence: it's not about you. It's called The Purpose-Driven Life, but he starts with, it's not about you. Because the first question every man must ask is not, what's my purpose? What's in it for me? What am I supposed to do? That's the second question. We'll talk about that next week. The first question is, where did I come from? Because only knowing where you came from can you have any idea where you're going. Here's a couple questions I want you to deal with today around the table. First, have you ever felt embarrassed or hesitant to acknowledge that you believe in the biblical account of God creating the universe? In what way? When it comes up, have you ever kept yourself from saying out loud what you think, or have you ever not been able to answer the question appropriately? Secondly, why is it significant in your mind that the Bible indicates that both male and female / all human beings are created in the image of God? Talk about why that's important for you personally. And then after, I'm going to wrap you up again about 12 till to go through our prayer time a little bit differently today. So get coffee, get a donut, have your questions. I'll wrap you up a little early today.